On today's show, the Dallas Mavericks get a win against the Jazz that was not technically a clutch win, but the Mavericks found a way to eke it out, grit and grind their way to a win. How did they do it? And what are we looking like right now in the standings? We'll talk about that and more on today's Locked On Mavs.
I'm Luka Doncic, and this is Locked On Mavericks podcast.
How about 10 Mavericks, NBA champions? Bang! It's good, and the Mavericks have won the game!
If you don't believe, you shouldn't be here.
Loyalty never fades away.
And welcome. You are locked on to the Dallas Mavericks. My name is Nick Angstadt, media member and NBA channel manager for the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Thanks for being part of the show and making Locked On Mavs your first listen today, where the best way you can help us grow the show is to let it ride.
That's the best way to grow the show.
That is. Just let it ride in your life.
All right.
Everywhere.
That's your YouTube tip of the day.
Listen to the show every day on Apple or Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts. Like the video on YouTube. Comment anything below. Let me know what's one thing that stood out to you in this Mavs win. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Use that code LockedOnNBA for first deposit match up to $100. And joining me, as always, on a post game. What you got for me? Slightly biased.
No ugly wins this time of the year. What did we say? No moral victories, but no moral defeats either.
That's right. No moral defeats, no moral victories. Just dubs and scrubs. It's all.
I don't even think this was an ugly win, like some people are saying, to be honest. A tough win, but not an ugly one.
It was a gritty win, right? It was like one of those gritty, weird. You're in the Utah altitude and all that, but yeah, no, definitely a gritty win. We'll talk about some of the things that stood out. We'll talk about Tim Hardaway Jr. had a bounce back game. Shooting was streaky as we.
No, I'm gonna ride for him. He had a great game tonight,
and he
did.
Definitely, he contributed in other ways, and so we'll talk about that. We'll talk about PJ Washington hitting 2 corner threes.
Call the National Guard.
And contributing in a big way. We'll talk about the Mavs centers and how they had a big impact, but we got to start here. Again, this was not a official clutch win for the Dallas Mavericks, because it didn't get within 5 in the last 5 minutes. It only got, the Mavericks were down by 1 with 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter after just going back and forth. In the first quarter, they allowed 41 points from the Jazz. They tightened up the defense, and then they only allowed 25 and then 22 points in the next 2 quarters. And then down by 1, 10 minutes left. And from the 10-minute mark to the about 4:40 mark, the Mavs went on a 16-2 run. They took a 13-point lead, and the game was basically over by that point. What did you see in that run?
2 superstars on your roster. I mean, that's just it. Harp was saying it on the broadcast. It was scaring me a little bit because there was like 5 minutes left, and it was only a 10-point game. And he was like, well, this is what happens when the Jazz don't really have a superstar. And I'm like, well,
they don't have a closer. He just kept saying they don't have a closer. They don't have a closer.
I'm like, can this get to like 2 minutes left before we just start saying stuff like that and calling Sexton? It's like 6 threes in a row.
Derek Harper must have watched like some Tony Romo film, because he was calling stuff. He was like, cash. He's he's making this one. Like, Timmy in, and then he would miss it. He was like predicting things before they would happen on this game.
I respect it. But no, Luka and Kyrie in the second half, both of them are kind of inefficient in the first half, especially Luka. But in the second half, Luka had 20 points on 7 of 12. I mean, hard to do much better than that. Kyrie 16 on 5 of 10, 4 of 6 from 3 for Kyrie in the second half. Luka 2 of 6, and Luka in the fourth quarter 10 points. Really just kind of put the game away. The Jazz just had, like Harp said, the Jazz did not have somebody to counteract that, because even. Larry Markkanen's a great player, but he's not somebody you put the ball in his hands. You're like, all right, the game has slowed down. We need you to create. We saw there was possessions down the stretch where they were hunting the Luka mismatch every time down the floor. It felt like they were putting him in action, and he was
PJ off Larry Markkanen every time.
Get PJ off of him, and we're either going to post up Markkanen against Luka, or we're going to try to get Luka switched on to Clarkson or Sexton or one of the guards. And Luka, to his credit, did a good job, forced some tough shots, and that's all you can really ask for against Markkanen, because again, he's a guy who plays just much better off ball than alongside, a great playmaker, which they really don't have at this point anymore.
And that's the difference between Larry Markkanen and Dirk, by the way. In case no one's asking this question today, but remember that there's lots of comparisons to him in draft coverage. That's the difference, I think, between a Dirk who could get his own shot and all that. And Larry Markkanen may develop that later in his career like Dirk did, but yeah, that's the difference.
you're just not going to develop one of the most unguardable shots of all time.
You don't think so?
No. Hey, I like Larry a lot. He's a great player, but I mean, he's better suited as if he's, you know, I mean, we just played the Jazz, so I guess this is relevant. If I'm the Jazz, the Thunder, I'm offering the Jazz everything in my war chest for Markkanen in the summer.
He'd be a great fit.
Yeah, that would just be it. That would be signed.
You're not worried about the rebounding with him, Chet, and like Jalen Williams as like your front line?
Points a night.
Yeah, may not matter at that point. But yeah, that stretch was all Luka and Kyrie. It was Kyrie had had a couple of runs there, hit a couple of threes. You had Dallas making a lot of like great passing. It feels like they're much more connected right now. They had the swing to to PJ Washington in the corner for the three. In both instances, both PJ Washington corner threes came in this stretch that I'm talking about, where the Mavs took a 13-point lead. You had you had Luka hit a jumper off of a Gafford offensive rebound. Just felt like they were taking advantage of all the ways that they had an advantage in this game, which was we can beat you in the paint, which is an amazing thing that I'm just not used to anymore. Like we can be bigger than you, we can beat you in the paint and clog the paint basically, and not allow them to get their drives to kick out or even like their floaters. Jazz take a lot of floaters, and they didn't take them in this one because there was just always somebody walling off the paint, whether it was PJ stepping over or Gafford stepping up or whoever. And that 16-2 run in the fourth quarter was just the big difference in this game that the Jazz just couldn't recover from.
Plus, it was a team defense too, because the Jazz, I believe, turn it over, if not more than anybody in the league. They're high up there on that list, and they had a low turnover game for pretty much this entire game. Then the Mavs forced 5 turnovers in the fourth quarter, and it felt like all of them were in that stretch where it was just active hands on defense. We're going to help off. We're going to dig in the corners. Like, they did a great job. And they, I mean, I don't want to say they slept walk out the gate because they did put up 37 points in the first quarter, but defensively it was a little bit rough. And the Jazz looked like a team that wanted to win after struggling. And look, the Jazz got embarrassed a few nights ago by this same exact team. Like that, the Jazz played a game in between then and got blown out by the Rockets. So they're really struggling lately. But, it's still the NBA. These guys are competitive. They want to win. They remember that. The Mavs were goofing and gaffing in that game. They were throwing lobs the entire time. Like
goofing and gaffing.
Daniel gaffing.
I literally wrote to the subtexters. I text notes in the middle of the game, and at halftime I said, "Yawn." It's like the Mavs are sleepwalking through this game. I was with you. I thought they were sleepwalking through it. And the Mavs can sleepwalk to 37 points in a quarter if the other team lets them.
Yeah, I mean their offensive I tweeted this during the game. Their offensive execution lately has just been. I mean, it's been incredible. The only problem is hitting your shots, which is continuing to be a problem, and converting on some of the looks. But as far as just the process goes, I mean, even the missed threes, like it's frustrating they don't go down, but you can't be mad at some of the shots you're getting. And that's why I'm a little bit hopeful that I know they're not as good of a 3-point shooting team as they once were, maybe, but I think they're collectively in a really bad shooting stretch because all of their shots are great.
It's true. And this is another game. We've been tracking this when the Mavs shot under 30% from 3. I think now they're 6-2 when they shoot under 30% from 3 since the trades, which is insane because they were like 1-15 or something before that, which is or like they were 0-7. They were 0-7 when they shot under 30% before the trades. So the Mavs get another win where they had to gut it out in the fourth quarter. They had their stars connect, and I felt like the connection between Luka and Kyrie was so evident in this game. It felt like there were some moments. I think Luka and Brunson kind of got to this point. You didn't really feel it though, where you just felt, oh my gosh, this is unstoppable, these two guys. But Luka and KP did hit a point at a couple times where there was just a rhythm between the two, where Luka would kick back to KP at the perfect time, and KP would take like a little step back, or he would, finish something in rhythm, or they would have a little give and go play or something where you just felt the two were in sync. It's like they're finally on the same time signature, like in music, if you're like they're both in 4/4 or both at 6/8 or whatever. And it feels like Luka and Kyrie are at that point now where they're both like, all right, we're on the same wavelength. We're in the same time signature. Like we're like, all right, I know exactly what you're going to do. Because there's a play, I think it was in the fourth quarter, maybe the third. Luka got the ball and Kyrie just like slowly like slunk over into the corner and knew exactly what Luka was going to do. So he knew which direction to go. Instead of going right and going into the wing, he went into the corner and Luka kicked it over to him and Kyrie hit a corner 3 off of it. They just have like that synergy between the two of them. So coming up, let's talk about how that synergy can take them forward. Let's talk about some of the other guys and how they made an impact. The centers were big in this game, and the Mavs dual combo, two-headed monster center group continues to be a huge asset for the Mavs. We'll talk about them and more coming up. Today's episode is brought to you by Quiiiz. Quiiiz daily fantasy made easy. It's so easy right now during March Madness, during the tournament, and during all that kind of stuff. You can go, and all you have to do is pick more or less than 2 to 6 player stat projections. So 10 points for a player, 10.5 points for a player. Pick more or less if you think they're going to score more or less in the game, and watch the winnings roll in. It's also demon time on Quiiiz, so you can win up to 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks. Go in there, see what's available, check. It changes all the time. Literally changes sometimes by the hour because your games are ending and other games are starting and all that. It has college basketball. You have NBA, MLB starting up. The Rangers are getting all excited. I saw all the stadium stuff today everybody was posting, so get ready for that. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Use that code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA.
Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks, everybody, for hanging out with us on Locked On Mavs, being part of the show, part of the Raccoon Squad, listening every day. We appreciate each and every one of you for checking out the show and listening to us. We got a 24/7 stream on Locked On Sports Dallas. Subscribe on YouTube or on Amazon Fire TV. Our show is on there, as well as the Cowboy Show. Rangers, Bryce Patrick has that show covered for you. Let's go check out that, guys. Locked On Sports Dallas on YouTube. All right, Slightly. Let's talk about these centers because I thought they had a big impact on this game too. They combine, what did they combine for? 19, no, hold on. They combine the centers.
19
hold
points.
Was I right about that? They combine for 19 points. I have it right here. 19 points, 20 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 steals, and 5 blocks. And Gafford had most of the assists, steals, and blocks. But man, they together just combined to make this unstoppable force that gives the Mavericks, 48 minutes, or in this game, whether they have like 46 minutes of just like 45 minutes of just like exactly what the Mavericks have needed for so long. And it's such a, you know what it is? It's a grounding force for the Mavericks. Like it felt like forever the Mavs were this ethereal, always up in the air. It's always dependent on the threes. And if the threes go, it's like something that it's dependent on the basketball gods, and the magnets and everything that we talked about, the fields, like the magnetic fields. And having centers like this is just such a grounding force. You're like, all right, we know we guaranteed we always will have the pick and roll to the rim. We always will have somebody at the rim that can catch the ball and can dunk it well, or can fight for a rebound or something. And it's just such a grounding force, especially in a game like this where not a lot of stuff was going right early on. And you just go back to the centers and you just keep them.
Yeah, no, I mean, Gafford was like a one-man wrecking crew in this game. He was a plus 15. I mean, Lively was good too. I thought he had his moments, but I thought there were some moments where he struggled a little bit. But yeah, when those two are on the floor together, it's
not together, man.
All right, I'm sorry, not together, but one of those guys is on the floor. That's what I was trying to get at.
You're feeding the people that want the Gafford Lively. By the way, somebody, who was it? Was it Mavs Highlights that posted someday this lineup? There will be a lineup of Lively at the 4 and Gafford at the 5, and Derek Lively retweeted it this weekend, which I found.
Oh, all right. I mean, there's a world where late in the game there's a free throw and you need rebounding. I mean, that's pretty much the only.
No, the play was Lively hitting a corner 3 like in high school or something.
I mean, I still just don't see a world that would make any sense.
Yeah, we're not getting there yet. You're giving them hope when you said them together on the floor.
Yeah, my bad. That would be remarkable though if Lively got that good on the perimeter defensively. That was somewhat possible.
That's the key right there.
Yeah, that would be the main thing. But man, Gafford. Gafford was a wrecking crew in this game.
Amazing.
Like you were saying, the Jazz tried to get into the paint, and that's how in the first quarter they did such a good job offensively. Was the point of attack defense was really sluggish to start this game, and the guards were just walking into the paint for Utah, and it led to kick out threes to Markkanen, who was just by himself on the wing every sinle time. I don't really know how that was allowed, but or lobs or whatever the case. It was just way too easy for their offense. And then the Mavs, all like a guy like Gafford and even Lively needs is just give me a second, give me the chance to get there, give me a chance to help and be set and ready to go. And Gafford had 5 blocks tonight, and how many steals? This website is wonky. It's
2
really
steals.
2 steals. I mean, he was a wrecking ball. He was a force. And 5 assists.
5 assists. He had that one where he tried the lob to Derek Jones Jr. right at the rim and Derek Jones Jr. took it down and then got the end one after. I think he got the assist for that.
Yep.
But
200 IQ play.
Just looking up, just like keeping his head up and not being one-dimensional in any way in this game. Like you'd think a center like that all he does is catch lobs and 33 field goals in a row. All he does is dunk, right? Like, but he adds some extra stuff and he adds some extra dimensions to this team. And you have to stay kind of on your toes when he has the ball at the nail or at the free throw line. And he can kick to guys, or he makes the right pass a lot of times too. Some of the things that we were really impressed with Lively about, catching out of the short roll. Gafford has made some of those passes really well as well.
That's been the real shocking thing. I'm trying to do some quick research to see how many times in his career he's had 5 assists in a game before this season, because it's been twice now with the Mavs, and both of them against the Jazz in the last 2 games. I think he's only done it once his entire career before these last 2 games. So that's been, because that was at the trade. That was like one of the things where we're like, well, Gafford, that's one of the things about Lively is his playmaking in the short roll. And if Gafford's there, you're not really getting that. But it's been pretty good. It's been, I think, a lot better. And it's a lot of the reason why I just pulled up some stats right now. The stats in the Mavs last 9 games when they're 8-1 over that stretch, including tonight's game. Just the huge contrast in the way that they've played the entire rest of the season is just shocking. I mean, they're 4th in assists over that stretch. It's somewhat small sample size, but I mean, they're playing like a completely different team. So I think it matters a little bit. 4th in assists over that stretch. The whole entire season up until then, 22nd in assists. Moving the ball around, dunking,
So
3-point
different.
attempts. They are 15th. I think they're middle of the pack in 3-point attempts over these 9 stretch. Just attempts, not makes, because makes his way down there. But before that, they were 2nd in the league behind the Celtics.
Attempts is bad.
Bombing 43s a game. And now they're at 35, which over the course, that's a pretty big, shocking change.
They're a completely different team. Gafford, by the way, had 5 assists in a game one time. 2023 Wizards against the Warriors. And they lost that game. But but he's had it twice. He's had 5 assists twice now for the Mavericks. The game against Utah
week too.
Yeah, against Utah. 5 assists twice, both against Utah. It's been awesome to see his playmaking, and the Mavericks just completely changed their team basically because of all this. 2 players, and then removing Grant Williams also helped them to not to have to rely on the 3 as much.
Yeah, well, PJ Washington, we even saw it in tonight's game. He did hit 2 corner threes, but there's that ability to rip and go, little jab step, get to the rim. That's in his bag. And it feels like Derek Jones Jr. is doing that way more lately. I don't know if maybe my eyes are just playing tricks on me, but it feels like he's getting to the rim more often than he was earlier in the season. And part of that could just be that he's not shooting threes as well as he was at the start of the season. So he's just, wanting to go to the rim more.
I feel like he was at the start of the season, and then he stopped for a while, and now he's back to attacking.
Yeah.
I feel like he lost confidence in the middle. When he lost that starting spot, it felt like he lost confidence in his jump shot, in driving ability, and it feels like that's kind of back now. And that was the question that I asked a couple of weeks ago of if you had to pick one player, Derek Jones Jr. or Josh Green, to like inject a bunch of confidence in over the next couple of weeks, who would you pick? And I think we both picked Josh Green. And then
I picked Derek Jones Jr.
Okay. And then he went down. Then Josh Green went down with an injury, and so Derek Jones Jr. is the guy. And
I remember we both picked Derek Jones Jr. because we both agreed that his skill set
point of
was
attack
maybe
defense.
was maybe more applicable in a playoff setting.
You're right,
and I still do believe that.
I wanted the funnier version of that story, and you got me back on track.
Yeah, the funnier version. Yeah, Josh Green. 1 game later, well, Josh Green's gonna be out for maybe a month.
But I also made us both look like idiots, and you made us look smarter. So I appreciate.
True, we're always right.
I appreciate that. But PJ Washington, he hit both those corner threes. Do you feel good about his shot? He feels good about his shot. He said at practice the other day that like he's like I never shot this bad in my life, basically. And it feels like it's really like getting to him. And the corners especially have been really bad for him. And I've been waiting for a team to just let him open in that corner, and the Jazz finally did it. They're going to see that in the playoffs. Everything gets squeezed. All of your weaknesses get exposed, or at least like amplified, and that's one. Our team's just going to let PJ Washington wide open in the corner.
Yeah, that's when I'll start to become genuinely concerned. Is like we saw with the Jazz tonight a little bit. If teams are just like, all right, you're gonna have to make that shot before we even attempt to close out.
Yeah.
But the reason why I'm not overly concerned about the Mavs 3-point shooting slump is they're great looks. Like they're generating so many good looks.
The same ones they always have.
Yeah, exactly. Offensively, it feels like they can do whatever they want currently. And I know the numbers don't really back this up because if you look at it, I mean, they've been below average offensive rating wise in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of their last 6 games, and they've won all of those but one. But it just, I don't know. That doesn't really pass the smell test for me, to be completely and totally honest with you. Like,
well, when you the offensive rating and like effective field goal percentage and all those kind of like advanced stats, they really weight threes because it's like, 3 in one play. That's such an efficient play instead of you come down and maybe get a free throw and get one point, or like, take a couple, you get three offensive rebounds and one trip down the floor or something and score 1 2-point bucket. That's way less efficient than if you just hit 1 3 on the other end. And so yeah, like some of those numbers, you gotta do the eye test too. You gotta watch and you gotta look at the numbers. You can't just do one or the other.
And part of that is
this game was an above average offensive rating game, by the way.
Oh, okay. It wasn't in there yet, so I didn't know. But part of it too is Luka's in a bit of a shooting funk, at least by Luka standards. And but again, just watching, I don't ever feel like they're like struggling mightily offensively to get a good look. It's just converting on those looks currently, which
they always have. Like Harp was saying that Luka and Kyrie have the green light, and I'm gonna go a step further. I think they have like a black light where it's just like always on. It's no matter what. Like it's always, you can always go to it. That's a well you can always go back to, right? It's Casey Musgrave's deeper well. They found it. It's Luka and Kyrie. Anytime you need a bucket, you can just go back to it. Coming up, let's talk about Tim. We get a conversation about Tim. And let's talk about where the Mavs are, in the standings, since the Sixers just are not cooperating with us tonight. We'll talk about that. What the Suns did and the Spurs did. So we'll talk about that and more coming up. Today's episode is brought to you by Betterhelp. Everyone has something in life that causes you stress, anxiety, that causes you to just sit at night and think about it over and over again. If you have a list of questions, you ask yourself, how am I going to, why does this, what's going to, all those questions start with those lines. You need somebody to talk to, and therapy can be that thing for you. It's not even all about trying to just like rip the trauma out of you and trying to figure out exactly what is wrong with you and what causes you to do these things. You can get there and you can do those things if you want, but it's about just talking through things in life and having somebody that's there, that's unbiased. I highly recommend therapy. I'm doing it. I've done BetterHelp before. I've used their services. I really enjoyed how it's entirely online. Flexible. I could pick I have a really weird schedule. It allowed me to pick different times each week. I didn't have to stick to one each week. And you can pick your therapist. And if you decide that you're not really vibing with that therapist, you can change for free. And therapists understand that and know that. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible, suited to your schedule. Visit betterhelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. Visit betterhelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. betterhelp.com/LockedOnNBA.
Uh-oh, guess what day it is? Guess what day it is, huh? Anybody?
All right, Slightly. It's game day. Mavs play again against the Kings. Reggie and I dropped a little bit of a preview of these games, so I went through a bunch of numbers and all that stuff. It's on the YouTube channel, and I'm also dropping it on the podcast feed as well, so check that out if you haven't. It'll be dropping right after this episode. And let's talk about Tim Hardaway Jr., because he had a very good shooting first half where you're like, all right, Tim is back. He shot 5 of 7 from the field, hit 3 threes, including one that was like a buzzer beater at the end. He felt good about it. Then the second half, he shot 0 of 7 from the field. And I was like, oh, here we go again with Tim Hardaway Jr. But you're defending him. Tell me why you think Tim had a good game today.
0 of 7 in the second half.
That's right.
Plus 12.
Okay.
4 assists. 3 steals in the second half. Look, here's what my thing. If we're gonna sit here and blast him every time he has a terrible game, which we've done, right? We've said, hey, he's got to play better. Like he's like almost can't be on the court at times the way that he's been playing. You have to commend him where, he went 0 of 6 on 3 and pretty much all of them are looks that you're okay with. But he actually impacted the game in other ways. I thought he had some really nice kickouts, like really, especially for Tim, like genuinely impressive ones. I think his most impressive one, I don't remember who missed it, but somebody bricked it in the corner naturally. But his defense was really good down the stretch. Active hands and, driving lanes or passing lanes and knocking the ball out. And I think he deserves a lot of credit for the way that he played tonight.
This is always the thing with Tim Hardaway Jr. If he's not going to shoot and he's not going to shoot well, he's just missing shots, what else does he give you? And for a long time and for most of the season, it was nothing.
Right.
Like it was nothing else. And his defense was a problem. And so I got to a point the other day, and after a game, you weren't there, where I was like, it's time to give Hardy the minutes, because Tim's not whatever Tim is doing, Hardy can do, and whatever problems like Hardy would bring, Tim is also those problems. And so,
Yeah.
But in this game, I completely agree with you that he did other stuff, and he has shown the ability to kick out and to throw lobs and to throw entry passes better than he throws swing passes. I'm like weird stuff like that throughout this game. But yeah, 3 steals, 4 assists in this game. He did other stuff. He was connected and active on defense. It was a really good Tim game, even though he shot 0 of 7 in the second half. Like, I'll take it.
And those I mean, the Mavs needed those points in the first quarter. Like it was
Definitely.
Yeah, that was like those were big buckets because Luka was struggling in the first quarter to shoot shooting wise, and the Mavs were playing terrible defensively. And I don't know, maybe you could say, well, part of that's because Tim's out there. Okay, I mean that might be so, but still, without his 11 points in the first quarter, pretty much every single one of his made shots in the game in the first 12 minutes of the game. I don't know. This game might have gone differently. You might have been down 13 going into the second instead, and it's a little bit of a tougher hole to climb out of.
And then you got to fight a little bit more, and Luka's got to play more than 41 minutes, which is also not ideal in the first night of a back-to-back.
Yeah,
but
definitely not
ideal. If I'm going to be a choosy beggar, I would rather Luka not play that many minutes, and he kind of looked like he was laboring. Are you buying any of Luka hamstring leg stuff?
Didn't look great.
No,
I mean, it's a tiny bit concerning. We'll see how he looks tomorrow. This could be maybe, I don't know, maybe he just tightens up 3 days off. I feel like Luka after 3 days off is just always a toughie.
There was a Reddit post that Luka is incredible on 3 days rest, and completely jinxed him. Just completely jinxed him.
Somebody did the wrong research. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, 3 days off, like that happens like twice a season, right?
Yeah, I was going to say that's
like
pretty.
All-Star break and even All-Star break for Luka.
Yeah.
Can I do career splits on here? Yeah, I can do career splits. Luka, come on, Basketball Reference, be cool.
This is why you come here, folks.
Yeah, to wait for me to. By the way, 3+ days off. How many in Luka's career? How many games in Luka's career do you think he's played? 3+ days.
46.
Nailed it.
Whoa. Are you serious?
You're also on Basketball Reference.
Can I guess how many points he scored?
There's not. I can see it in your glasses. It's a classic Luka line: 29 points, 10 rebounds.
Wow, it's literally like the same as he's like unbelievably consistent.
He's exactly the same in 3+ days.
1, 2, and 3+ days are like almost completely identical.
Almost exactly the same. He shoots actually better on 1 day off. He has a 59.5% true shooting percentage.
Oh, back-to-back numbers are rough.
A little rough, yeah. But
I mean, for Luka standards,
rough. 25 points, 8 boards, 8 assists.
By Luka standards,
just super rough for him.
Need a breakout one tomorrow.
Let's talk about where they are in the standings. The San Antonio Spurs, big fans over here. They get a win against the Phoenix Suns. The Phoenix Suns drop to 42-30. They are in 8th. The Mavericks are going to be in 7th after this Kings win against the Sixers, which is why these 2 Kings games coming up are so important. But the Suns, they fall back. Bradley Beal goes out with a hand injury. Nurkic goes out with some kind of ankle injury. And if we just want to laugh at the Suns for a second, listen to their schedule the rest of the season. You ready for this?
Yeah.
At Denver, at Oklahoma City, at New Orleans, home for the Cavs, home for the Timberwolves, home for the Pelicans, a weird back-to-back home and home for the Clippers, at Sacramento, at the Timberwolves to end the season. That's the Suns' schedule the rest of the way. Every single team that they play has a better record than them, and their win percentage is like 65% combined.
Dude, I mean, in a 10-game stretch, if your easiest game is home against the Cavs,
well, it's probably the Clippers right now, but
true, it is probably the Clippers the way they've been playing. But the Cavs are like 3-10 and they're 3-7 in their last 10.
Yeah, right.
So you might have caught them at the right time, assuming that they don't turn it around and Donovan Mitchell might even be back for that game, the way that it sounds. So that's we were talking about this before the show. I have never seen. To close out the season, that is just crazy. Even preseason, you look at that and you would just assume that's insane.
The Suns either rip through that schedule and like walk into the playoffs like champions,
yeah,
or they just, they're 2.5 games out of 9th right now.
I don't get that.
They're
those vibes
five
from
games.
them at
They're
all.
5 games out of 10. So that seems to be too far. There's not enough games. The Warriors
To
aren't
fall
playing
off
well.
completely. Yeah.
Yeah, the Warriors aren't playing well enough. The Rockets are, but the Warriors aren't playing well enough. For the Suns to just completely fall out of it and do what the Mavs did last year, that would be
I mean, that would be hilarious. That's
insane.
not
There's too many games though. There's too many games.
Yeah, that would be almost improbable. I think something would have to happen to KD, which knock on glass we don't want. But that would have to be.
And you
like,
don't. And I'm not celebrating the Beal injury. I'm not celebrating the Nurkic injury.
No,
they're
of
concerning.
course not.
And the Suns have an insane schedule. And these Mavs Kings games are so important. You have any comments on the Mavs Kings games coming up?
Look, I'll just give a little motivational speech to any guy. If anybody
I'm
listen,
ready.
if any of the players listen, you're a better team than them. I'll die on this hill. I don't care. You're better. I watch pretty much
Can't
every
stand the
Kings game
Kings.
over the last 2 or 3 months because of the standings. You're better than they are. All right. Just call a spade a spade. You have the 2 best players on the court. That's just the truth as well. So go out, play your game, crisp on defense. You play how you played in the first quarter. You're gonna have a rough time tomorrow night. I'm just gonna tell you right now. You got to rotate. You gotta keep De'Aaron Fox and Malik Monk. You got to at least just give them some type of pressure, some type of ball pressure.
That's
You
right.
can't let them just waltz into the paint. And Gafford, big night for you. It's gonna be a big game. This
Huge.
will probably be one of your biggest tests as a Maverick with Sabonis and how he's been playing lately. So, you mentioned a stat before how the Kings are. I don't remember what the threshold was for points in the paint. Was it like 50?
You're doing great. You're doing great.
54 or something like that.
The Kings, I shared this in the preview. The Kings are, when they are held under 45 points in the paint, they are 4-15.
4-15. So there you go. Keep them at the
That's
paint.
it.
Play your game.
Control the paint. Big.
Play at your pace. Don't let them dictate the pace. Don't get into a shootout with them. Slow the game down.
Well, Mavs are like 4th in pace this year. I don't know if you've looked up the pace.
No, I know, but I don't like whatever they say. Oh, okay, you guys like to run. All right, we'll do it. I like when they're like, okay, you know what? We're gonna muddy this game up a little bit, like they did tonight against the Jazz. And obviously the Kings are much better than the Jazz are at this point, but that was like a weird back and forth shootout early in the game, this game against the Jazz, and then the Mavs said, all right, we're playing at our pace now. And there's just you can't keep up with it.
Since the trades, by the way, Mavs 4th in pace. They're 9 overall. And the Kings are not as fast as they once.
Yeah, their
once were.
offense
They're 12th.
And they've been playing well lately, and it's been on the back of some pretty good defense. Like you got to give them some props. Keon Ellis has kind of like reshaped their defensive outlook. But again, you're a better team. I don't know what you want me to say. I'm not going to sit here and lie and pretend you're not. Oh, well, you got to show up and you got to really play hard. No, play your game and you win. That's it.
That's right. Go play these games. These are 2 really important games. We'll have you covered. I'll probably do a crossover with Matt George from Locked On Kings in between these 2, by the way. Guys, thanks so much for listening to Locked On Mavs.
Peace out.
Boom.